Hello everyone, we are White Group. As you can see, we have the American Romantic periods, the expansion, and bellies. Was a movement that rose gradually, involved in many ways from where it began, went through so many phases, and was practiced by so many disparate writers that any simple definition is slippery at best. In addition, the terms we use to describe literature movement are really terms that are much broader and vaster, reflecting large scales. Thinking in art in general, we have philosophy, religion, and politics, etc. Also was a time of rapid expansion and growth in the United States that fueled institution, imagination, and individualism in the literatures. In 1830, just 50 years after the Revolutionary War, America was still really young, but its citizens were anxious to create their own identity that was uniquely American and not so reliant on European values. Within these stories, novels and poems occurs some characteristics. These characteristics are imagination, individuality, nature as a source of spirituality, looking to the past for wisdom, and seeing the common man as a hero. We also have the origin. That these are very important. We have like three revolutions that took place during the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, and the Motor Revolution. In Great Britain, the Victorian era lasted from 1837 to 1901. In the US, the Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865. I think this is all for the information. We're gonna continue to the next part. We have the forging identity. As first, we have Washington Irving Thomas Thoreau. We have Fenimore Cooper, Helen Bryant, and George Harris. They are the forging identity. We also have the writers of prose. As first, we have Washington Irving. That he was born on 1783 and died in 1869. We have a second, James Fenimore Cooper. He was born in 1789 and died in 1861. We have George Washington Harris. He was born in 1814 and died in 1869. And finally, list we have Thomas Banks Thorpe, who was born in 1816 and died in 1878. We have the writers of verse also, as you can see here. We have the fireside poet, and that. Like it says here, the fireside poet, also known as a household poet and schoolroom poet. They include Henry Wadsworth, Longfellow, William Cullen Bryant, John Greenleaf Whittier, James Russell Lowell, and Oliver Wendell Holmes Sir. These four people were fireside poet. And we have here the great writer, that is Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was born in 1803 and died in 1882. He fell here in the second year. And we have the poetry analysis here. And as a title, we have the art. That's the title. And the first question is, what does the title suggest the poem is about? We as a group, we suggest that art gives us a new experience of reality as evidenced through the artist's personality, according to Emerson. All art, however, new and contemporary, involve from art created previously as a concentric circle of archetypes, and consciousness expands. This is the function of art to open our eyes and beauty in all its manifestation. The beauty in the world around us that most people never notice, Emerson says. This newness within some kind of a tradition combining with art evolution of new forms is what causes art to be regarded at the time as scandalous and shocking. But in reality, all good art seeks a higher front of simplicity and most direct route to the soul and mind of viewers to give a fresh and brand new experience of reality. In paraphrase, we have, what is the person saying? What is the literature meaning of the poem? Does it seem different from what the writers? And we as a group say that because of the soul of the progresses is never quite repeat itself, but in every act tends to production of new and fairer whole. And one of the things that got our attention the most is that, as you can see here, we have an art lover is free from all worries of the world because that individual can associate himself or herself with the infinite mind of God, the ultimate reality. This is the reason why an art lover understands the ground reality of the world. And second, we have the title here again. And it says, look at the title again. Does your reading of the poem change without email analysis? How? Or do you notice any new significance? And Wizard says that we agree that the reading of the poem, we are disagree because the reading of the poem do not change at all from the original, and we didn't notice any new significance. And the theme, it says, what is the theme of the poem? Well, we as a group says that we are immersed in beauty, but our eyes have no clear vision. I like this word because, like it says, we are immersed in beauty, but our eyes have no clear vision. Sometimes we just care about our beauty, but we just don't go beyond that. And that's the thing that we got our attention the most. And this part is, I will continue my classmates.
Hello, Mr. Chavarria. I'm going to tell you about Transcendentalism. I'm going to start with origins. Transcendentalism is a 19th century school of American theological and philosophical thought that combines respect for nature and self-sufficiency with elements of Unitarianism and German Romanticism. Transcendentalism, it has its origin in New England in the early 1800s in the birth of the Unitarianism. It was born from a debate between new life that is theological and the old life that is opponent. They embrace idealism, focusing on nature of and opposing materialism. Henry David Thoreau, American essayist, poet, and practical philosopher, renowned for having led the doctrines of Transcendentalism as recorded in his masterwork, Walden. Walden is an essay published in 1854. It's one of the most famous text writing by an American. The author recounts the 2 years, 2 months, and 2 days that he lived in the cabin built by himself in the near Lake Walden. Far Side Poet, so named probably because of the congeniality and the gentle persuasiveness of their finest verse, which were made by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. His best verse was A Palm of Life, The Children's Hour, James Russell Lowell. His best verse was Conversation on Some of the Old Poets and Bigelow Papers. Oliver Wendell Holmes. His best verse, The Chambers Natulus, The Ball of the Oysterman, Studying a Ballad. John Greenleaf Whittier. His best verse, Snowbound. Into the Wild is one of the most famous writings of Christopher McCandless, who was a transcendentalist. He believed that the nature had the power to change the ways of the life, and was inspired to live like an author. He studied and gave up the close human relationship to live an untamed life. Who traveled and adventure, coupled with his simple lifestyle, ended up making him a popular icon. Herman Melville. First activity. Herman Melville was born on August 1st, 1819 in New York. Melville worked as cabin boy at a ship named St. Lawrence and traveled on whaler named Okochee to the Marquesas Islands. He wrote his first novel called Typee, and his most successful novel was Moby Dick, which was published in 1851. And 4 years later, he published a novel called Israel Porter in 1855. His last novel was Billy Budd, since unfortunately he died on September 28, 1891, in New York, his natal city. As you can see, here is the second activity. Harriet Beecher Stowe, moving to Ohio and getting married, learning about slavery, Uncle Tom's Cabin, and the history. Dark Romanticism. Edgar Allan Poe, American writer, poet, essayist, literary critic, and editor, representative of American Romanticism. Generally recognized as one of the universal teachers of the short story, on which he was one of the first practitioners in his country. He was remembered for his gothic novels, especially remembered for his oral histories. Nathaniel Hawthorne. His work often focused in history, morality, and religion, known for many histories of gothic fiction and dark romanticism. Themes. Edgar Allan Poe. Rivals and doppelgangers. The dead and the living. The power of memory, and self-solitude and consciousness. Nathaniel Hawthorne. Their themes: guilt and sins, and human morality and religion. Literary works. Edgar Allan Poe. Their works: The Raven, The Telltale Heart, The Black Cat. Nathaniel Hawthorne. Their works: The Scarlet Letter, The Birthmark, and John Goodman Brown.
Well, I'm gonna talk about the origin, characteristics, authors, and work. The first is the Realism. The Realism was a literary movement born in the second half of the 19th century. but sought for art to show reality objectively and using the simple language of everyday speech. Also, the realists talk about the life of American, the real life, using the ordinary life of the people to ordinary situations for tell stories of the real life. After that, we have the naturalists. Naturalism was a literary movement characterized by being highly scientific, taking various principles of determinism and materialism at the basis of the literary creation. Also, the realism is really similar to the naturalism, but with the difference that the naturalists take the bad part of the social lower economic class and talk about the topic of the death and the misery. Also, the naturalism is influenced by the Darwinism and the theory of the evolution. Continuing with the topic, we have the origins of the two movements, realism and naturalism, are a reaction against romanticism. It's really important because it was thought to have lost touch with the contemporary. The three revolutions took place during the 19th century were the Industrial Revolution, the Scientific Revolution, and the Moral Revolution. In the first, the Industrial Revolution, it started with the invention of the steam machine. After that, it continued with the expansion of the population and the origin of the bigger cities. Also, with the increasing of the population, started different problems as the alcoholism, prostitution, and also the tuberculosis. And in cause of this, the population started to be more pessimistic. But after that, we have the scientific revolution. The scientific revolution was a period where the expansion of the transport. Also, during this age, Thomas Alva Edison invented the light bulb and the electric chair. Also, two scientists as Marie Curie and Pierre Curie discovered the radioactivity and the polonium. So, during this age was really important, the revolution of the scientific. Well, the last revolution is the moral revolution. I just saw that this age marked the end of the hypocrisy of the Victorian age because during this time Darwin said for the first time that humans come from the apes. Also, taking the ideas of Darwin, Karl Marx invented the communist theory. So this was an age of really conflicts about all these things. So all these conflicts marked the line or marked the idea of the new society, of the modern society. So this was an age of really change in the moral of the society and in the scientific revolution, in the scientific aspect. So after that, we have the similarities and the difference between these two movements because we should remember that both movements are against the romanticism, but at the same time are similar in some aspects but are different in others. So we are going to see. Thanks. Well, we're going to talk about the author and works. The first we have here is Tom Sawyer in 1876, written by Mark Twain. Well, the story of Tom Sawyer tells us about a troublemaker child. And this troublemaker lives with his aunt Polly. And in one occasion, Polly asked Tom that should paint a fence, but he don't want to do it. So he convinced his friend that paint the fence is a good idea and is a joy. So, but the only that enjoy this situation is Tom. And also part of the novel is dedicated to the romance between Tom and Belky Thatcher. Belky is a new girl in the town. After that, I'm gonna talk about the Huckleberry Finn in 1885, written too by Mark Twain. This was a great American novel. The works among the first in major American literature, characterized by the colorful of the regionalism. The book is noted for its the color description of the place and for the people. Also, all this along the Mississippi River. But at the same time, not always good for this book of Mark Twain. Why? Because this book want to be banned since their publication in the 1885. The first reason is about because people thought that Mark Twain want to be a rebellion of child because they think that child could take the action of Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer, as we know they are troublemaker guys. So also, the second reason is for the use of the N-word in the book of Mark Twain. After, we have another author about naturalism. This is Stephen Crane, with his story about magic. So this is all for me. I hope you have enjoyed it, but also you have learned something new.